Hello Year 10 and welcome to this guided reading. Now I've chosen to read some extracts from Alone in Berlin by Hans Fallada. It's one of my favourite books because it provides a really good insight into life in Nazi Germany and the level of fear that pervaded society as a result of the Nazi rule and the Gestapo and the fear of the concentration camps, for example. Now, this is a really good opportunity for you to just listen to some non-fiction reading and potentially apply the knowledge that you've been learning in your remote learning tasks. Now, it has been made into a film and it is available on Netflix. Personally, I really prefer the book just because it goes into a bit more detail and the film feels a little bit rushed, but I just thought I'd let you know that this is available on Netflix. Now, just to set some of the context before I start reading my chosen extract. It is set in Berlin, obviously. It's 1940 and the city is paralysed by fear due to the Gestapo and the Nazi dictatorship, but also the fact that they are in the middle of a war. But one man refuses to be scared, and that man is Otto Quangel. He's an ordinary German living in a shabby apartment block, and he tries to stay out of trouble under Nazi rule. But this dramatically changes when he is given the news that his son has died fighting at the front. He is shocked into an extraordinary act of resistance due to his hatred for the regime and the Führer that has taken away his only son. If caught participating in this act of resistance, he will be executed. Now, the bit I have chosen to read is the moment that Otto tells his wife, Anna, what he is planning to do. Now, this may seem a small act of resistance, but any form of resistance carried a death sentence if you were opposing the Nazi regime. So hopefully as you listen and read along with me, you will be able to apply some of the knowledge you've learnt about the Nazi dictatorship and the level of control. So this is chapter 17 and it's called The First Card is Written. Well, Otto, she asked, are you already done with your carving? For today, he replied, and at that moment she knew that their conversation was now imminent, that he was planning something. This strangely persistent man who always waited for the right moment, who could never be induced to do something except in his own sweet time. They ate their dinner in silence. Then she went back into the kitchen to tidy up, leaving him sitting on a corner of the sofa, staring into space. When she emerged half an hour later, he was still sitting there. But now she felt she could no longer wait for him to decide. His patience and her impatience made her restless. What if he was still there, like that at 4 o'clock, and after supper? She couldn't wait any longer. Well, Otto, she asked, what's it to be? No after dinner nap, like every other Sunday? Today's not every other Sunday. Every other Sunday is gone, for good. He got up abruptly and left the room, but today she wouldn't let him run off on one of his mysterious errands. She ran after him. No, Otto, she began. He was standing by the front door of the apartment, having just put the chain across. He raised his hand to call for silence and listened to what was going on outside. Then he nodded and walked past her, back into the parlour. When she came in after him, he was sitting in his place on the sofa, and she sat down beside him. If anyone rings, Anna, he said, don't open it until I... Oh, come on, Otto, who is going to ring at such a time? She said impatiently. Who's going to visit us? Tell me whatever it was you were going to tell me. I will tell you, Anna, he replied with uncharacteristic meekness. But if you pressure me, you'll only make it harder for me. She brushed his hand, the hand of a man who always found it hard to communicate what was going on inside him. I won't pressure you, Otto, she said soothingly. Take your time. But right after that, he began to speak, and he spoke for almost 5 minutes in slow, terse, carefully considered sentences, after each of which, as though it were the last, He closed his thin-lipped mouth tight, and while he spoke, he kept looking off to one side behind Anna. Anna Quangle kept her eyes on him while he spoke, not taking them off his face, and she was almost grateful to him for not looking at her. So difficult was it for her to conceal the disappointment that came over her. My God, what had this man come up with? She had had great deeds in mind, and had been afraid of them at the time. An attempt to assassinate the Führer, or at the very least some active struggle against the party and its officials. And what was he proposing? Nothing at all. Something so ridiculously small, something absolutely in his character, something discreet, out of the way, something that wouldn't interfere with his peace and quiet. Postcards with slogans against the Führer and the party, against the war, for the information of his fellow men. That was all. And these cards he wasn't going to send to particular individuals or stick on walls like placards. No, he wanted to leave them lying in the stairwells of widely visited buildings, leave them to their fate, without any control over who picked them up, where they might be trampled underfoot, torn up. Everything in her rebelled against this obscure and ignoble form of warfare. She wanted to be active, to do something with results she could see. But Quangle, once he had finished talking, appeared not even to be expecting any form of demurral from his wife, and she sat there struggling with herself in silence in the corner of the sofa. Wasn't it her duty to say something to him, after all? He got up and walked over to the door again to listen. When he came back, he took off the tablecloth again, folded it up, and hung it carefully over the back of a chair. Then he went to the old mahogany bureau, took the bunch of keys from his pocket, and unlocked it. While he was rummaging in there, Anna made up her mind. Hesitantly, she said, "Isn't this thing that you're wanting to do, isn't it a bit small, Otto?" He stopped his rummaging, and still standing there stooped, he turned his head to his wife. "Whether it's big or small, Anna," he said, "if they get wind of it, it'll cost us our lives." There was something so terribly persuasive in those words, and in his dark, fathomless bird's eye, that she shuddered. For an instant, she saw quite clearly the grey, stony prison yard and the guillotine standing ready, its still dull in the early light of dawn, a mute threat. Anna Quangle felt herself trembling. Then she looked over at Otto again. He might be right. Whether their act was big or small, no one could risk more than his life. Each according to his strength and abilities, but the main thing was, you fought back. Still, Quangle eyed her silently, as though witnessing the struggle she was having with herself. Then his eye brightened. He took his hands out of the bureau, straightened up, and said almost with a smile, "But they're not going to catch us that easily. If they're canny, we can be canny too. Canny and careful. Careful, Anna, always on guard. The longer we fight them, the longer we'll be effective. There's no use in dying early. We want to live. We want to be around when they fall. We want to be able to say, 'We were there, Anna.'" He said these words lightly, almost jocularly. Then he went back to rummaging, and Anna leaned back into the sofa, relieved. A load had been taken from her mind. Now she was convinced that Otto had some great plan. He carried his little bottle of ink, his postcards in their envelope, and the large white gloves to the table. He uncorked the bottle, seared the pen nib with a match, and dipped it in the ink. There was a quiet hiss. He looked attentively at the pen and nodded. Then he awkwardly pulled on the gloves, took a card from the envelope, and laid it down in front of him. He nodded slowly at Anna. She was alertly following every one of these meticulous and long-considered preparations. Then he indicated his gloves and said, "Fingerprints, see?" Then he picked up the pen and said softly, but clearly, the first sentence of our first card will read, Mother, the Führer has murdered my son. Once again, she shivered. There was something so bleak, so gloomy, so determined in the words Otto had just spoken. At that instant, she grasped that this very first sentence was Otto's absolute and irrevocable declaration of war, and also what that meant. War between, on the one side, the two of them, poor, small, insignificant workers who could be extinguished for just a word or two, and on the other side, the Führer, the party, the whole apparatus in all its power and glory, with 3/4 or even 4/5 of the German people behind it, and the two of them in this little room in Jablonski-Strasse. She looked at her husband. While she's been thinking all this, he has just got to the third word of the first sentence. With unbearable patience, he is drawing the capital F of the word Führer. Why don't you let me write, Otto? She begs. I can do it much more quickly. At first he just growls back, but then he does give her an explanation. Your handwriting, he says. They would catch us sooner or later by the handwriting. This here is a sign writing style, block capitals, like type. He stops and goes on drawing the letters. Yes, he's planned it all. He doesn't think he's forgotten anything. He knows this style from the plans of furniture designers. No one can tell from such a style who's doing it. Of course, with Otto Quangle's enlarged hands and used to writing, it looks particularly crude and coarse. But that doesn't matter. That won't betray him. If anything, it's a further advantage. The postcard will have something poster-like about it that will catch the eye. He goes on drawing patiently. And she too has become patient. She is beginning to adjust to the idea that this will be a long war. She is calm now. Otto has considered everything. Otto is dependable, come what may. The thought he has given to everything, the first postcard in the war that was started by the death of their son, is rightly about him. Once they had a son. The Führer murdered him. Now they are writing postcards. A new chapter in their lives. On the outside, nothing has changed. All is quiet around the Quangles. But inside, everything is different. They are at war. She gets her darning basket and starts darning socks. Now and then she looks across at Otto, slowly drawing his letters, not ever changing his tempo. After almost every letter, he holds the postcard out at arm's length and studies it with narrowed eyes. Then he nods. Finally, he shows her his first completed sentence. It occupies 1.5 very generous lines of the postcard. She says, You won't get much on each postcard. He answers, Never mind, I'll just have to write a lot of postcards. And each card takes a long time. I'll write one every Sunday. Later on, maybe 2. The war is far from over. The killing will go on. He is unshakable. He has made a decision and will act on it. Nothing can reverse it. Nothing can deflect Otto Quangle from his chosen path. He says, the second sentence, Mother, the Führer will murder your sons too. He will not stop till he has brought sorrow to every home in the world. She repeats it. Mother, the Führer will murder your sons too. She nods. She says, Write that. She suggests we should try to leave that card somewhere where a lot of women will see it. He reflects, then shakes his head. No, women who get a shock. You never know what they will do. A man will stuff it in his pocket on the staircase. Later on he'll read it carefully. Anyway, all men are the sons of mothers. He stops talking and goes back to his drawing. The afternoon goes by. They don't think about supper. It's evening and the card is finished at last. He stands up. He takes one more look at it. There, he says. That's that. Next Sunday, the next one. She nods. When will you deliver it? She whispers. He looks at her. Tomorrow morning. Let me come with you the first time. He shakes his head. No, he says, and especially not the first time. I have to see how things go. Come on, she begs him. It's my card. It's the card of the mother. All right, he determines. You can come, but only as far as the building. Inside, I want to be on my own. All right. Then the card is carefully pushed inside a book, the writing things put away, the glove slipped into his tunic. They eat their supper, barely speaking. They hardly notice how quiet they both are, even Anna. They are both tired, as though they have done an immense labour or been on a long journey. He gets up from the table. He says, I'm going to go and lie down. And she, I'll tidy up in the kitchen, then I'll come too. I feel so tired, and we haven't done anything. He looks at her with a glimmer of a smile on his face. Then he goes to the bedroom and starts to get undressed. But later, when they are both lying in the dark, they can't get to sleep. They toss and turn, each listens to the other's breathing, and in the end they start to talk. It's easier to talk in the dark. What do you think will happen to our cards? Asks Anna. People will feel alarmed when they see them lying there and read the first few words. Everyone's frightened nowadays. That's true, she says. Everyone is. But she exempts the two of them, the two Quangles. Almost everybody's frightened, but not us. The people who find them, he says, saying aloud things he's thought through 100 times, will be afraid of being seen on the stairs. They will quickly pocket the cards and run off, or they may lay them down again and disappear, and then the next person will come along. That's right, says Anna, and she can see the staircase before her eyes, a typical Berlin staircase, badly lit, and anyone with a card in his hand will suddenly feel like a criminal. Because in fact, everyone thinks the way the writer of the card thinks, but they can't let it show, because it's a capital crime. Some, Quangle resumes, will hand the card in right away, to the block warden or the police, anything to be rid of it. But even that doesn't matter, whether it's shown to the party or not, whether to an official or a policeman, they will all read the card, and it will have some effect on them, even if the only effect is to remind them that there is still resistance out there, that not everyone thinks like the Führer. No, she says, not everyone, not us. And there will be more of us, Anna. We will make more. We will inspire other people to write their own cards. In the end, scores of people, hundreds, will be sitting down and writing cards like us. We will inundate Berlin with postcards. We will slow the machines. We will depose the Führer, end the war. He stops, alarmed by his own words. These dreams that so late in life have come to haunt his heart. But Anna Quangle is fired by this vision. And we will have been the first. No one will know, but we will know. Suddenly sober, he says, perhaps already there are many thinking as we do. Thousands of men must have fallen. Maybe there are already writers like us. But that doesn't matter, Anna. What do we care? It's we who must do it. Yes, she says. And he, once again, carried away by their prospects. And we will keep the police busy, the Gestapo, the SS, the SA. Everywhere people will be talking about the mysterious postcards. They will inquire, suspect, observe, conduct house-to-house searches, in vain. We will go on writing, on and on. And she, maybe they'll even show the Führer himself the cards, like ours. He will read our accusations. He will go wild. It's said he goes wild when something doesn't happen according to his will. He will order his men to find us, and they won't find us. He will have to go on reading our accusations. They are both silent, dazzled by their prospects.